I tell you, Brigadier, there's nothing to worry about. The Brontosaurus is large and placid. And stupid. If the square of that hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square on the other two sides, why is it mouse when it spins? Never did know the answer to that one. Hey, welcome to Class Act Media. I'm Jack, and this has been a long time coming, folks. We have reached the run of Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, probably the most iconic Doctor there ever was. Let's get into it.
If you've only ever seen a couple classic Doctor Who episodes, chances are the fourth Doctor is the one you're familiar with. His run lasted 7 seasons, the longest in Doctor Who history, so of course he's the actor most closely associated with the show. Man, most shows are lucky to have their entire run last 7 seasons. That ought to give you some scope for how prolific Doctor Who is. His look is nothing short of iconic. With his coats, hats, and ridiculously long scarves, he's certainly got the most casual wardrobe of any Doctor up to that point. This casual look reflected a less self-serious attitude for him. While this Doctor certainly kept the character's arrogance intact, it was mixed with a great deal of incredibly witty humor helped along with Tom Baker's unbreakable charm. His silly and sarcastic sense of humor was so fun to watch, it absolutely carried even the weakest stories. I think this quote sums up the fourth Doctor's personality perfectly.
There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
As far as his companions are concerned, Sarah Jane Smith carries over from the third Doctor's era and is joined for the first few stories by Harry Sullivan. Harry was just fine, not bad, but not particularly interesting or memorable. He reminded me of a poor man's version of Ian from the first Doctor's run. I was glad to see Harry not stick around for very long, because that gave Sarah a huge chance to shine as her own character. I mentioned in my last Doctor Who video that I didn't think Sarah clicked all that well with the third Doctor, but I'm happy to say that she's a perfect fit for the fourth. She was smart, funny, and adventurous enough to keep up with him, but also was able to remain grounded enough to rein him in on his antics. Honestly, she had such a good rapport with the Doctor that I wish she had stuck around for longer, but I guess not all good things can last. As we move on from Sarah Jane, the show tried something that I wish they would do more often nowadays: non-human companions. They dipped their toes in the water of that concept with the Doctor's next companion, Leela. Leela is a human, sure, but she's from a colony on another planet that devolved to basically become cavemen because a computer went crazy, and it's sort of the Doctor's fault because the computer is the Doctor, but not really. Look, I never claimed Doctor Who always made perfect sense. I think Leela was okay. I don't know, something about her just doesn't work for me. She's always so quick to pull out her knife and try to stab someone, and it just seems like she never grows past that inclination, even after several episodes traveling with the Doctor. On top of that, I just never got the feeling that the Doctor liked her very much. He usually has a jokingly insulting relationship with all his companions, but they all usually have the social awareness and sense of humor to be able to joke back at him. Leela never really seemed to get the jokes, though, so all the insults came across as the Doctor being a dick to her for no reason. If Leela was the show dipping their toes in the water of the non-human companion concept, then the Doctor's next companion was them diving headfirst into the deep end. K9, my absolute favorite of any fourth Doctor companion.
You're such a good boy. I love you. I love you.
Do I really need to explain my love for K9? He's a hyper-intelligent supercomputer made to look like a dog, and he can shoot lasers out of his nose. He's basically the best thing humanity has ever created. Honestly, he can come across as a bit overpowered at times, since he seems to be able to take down any opponent and has very few weaknesses. Except water, apparently.
Oh, Christ!
For most of his time on the show, K9 was voiced by John Leeson, but for one season he was replaced with David Brearley. He does a fine enough job, but every time I hear him speak, I just miss Leeson in the role. To quote Brain Dump,
cartoon characters are their voices.
Okay, I guess K9 isn't technically a cartoon character, but he's close enough. Continuing the trend of non-human companions, this era also gave us Romana, the first and only Time Lord companion. Okay, I guess Susan was a Time Lord too, but she left before the term Time Lord was even introduced. Romana served as a great subversion of the regular companion role. Normally, a companion's job is to keep the Doctor grounded in her mind and what it means to be human. But Romana, having spent her entire life on Gallifrey, had to learn how to be human from the Doctor. Romana was also just as smart and funny as the Doctor, which made them a great duo. Now, being a Time Lord, Romana also experienced a regeneration during her time on Doctor Who. I try to be pretty positive in these videos. Even when there's something I don't like, I'll find some way to spin it in a positive light. But Romana's regeneration scene is so bad that I cannot think of a single good thing to say about it. Up to this point, regeneration has always been shown as a last resort for Time Lords to use when there's no other way to avoid death. It's also been shown as fairly traumatic, forcing you to permanently change your face, voice, and even personality to an extent. But in Romana's case, she simply decided at the start of one episode, I think I'll regenerate now, with no inciting incident, and then chose the new appearance she wanted to have. And look, I know Time Lords have been shown to have some say as to what they look like when they regenerate. When the second Doctor regenerates into the third, the Council of Gallifrey offered him the choice of what he would look like. But in that case, it was the Time Lords using their hyper-sophisticated technology to influence the regeneration, not one person doing it on her own. Angry rants aside, the second version of Romana, played by Lalla Ward, was even better than the first. Yes, I do have a type, and it's Lalla Ward as Romana. She and the Doctor had such great chemistry, it's no wonder that she and Tom Baker got married after they were done with the show. You know, for as long as that lasted. As great of a companion as Romana was, she was ditched pretty unceremoniously. At the end of the episode Warriors Gate, she just says, oh yeah, also I'm not coming with you, and the Doctor says, oh okay, that's fine, take K9, bye-bye now. This era really had a problem finding good ways to get rid of companions. Sarah had to leave because the Doctor got called to Gallifrey and wasn't allowed to take non-Time Lords, and Leela decided to stay on Gallifrey after the Doctor took her there. Yeah, they didn't do a great job keeping up the canon in this period of the show. The Doctor got a few companions that showed up right at the end of his run. Adric, a kid from an alternate universe called E-Space, Nyssa, a princess from the planet Traken, and Tegan Jovanka, an airline stewardess who accidentally wandered into the TARDIS thinking it was a regular police box. I didn't see enough of them to form an opinion, so I'll talk more about them in the next Doctor Who video.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Where are my manners? Would you like a jelly baby? That was a $2 prop for a 5-second bit. It was worth it, folks. I'm dedicated.
I hate to start off this next section with a negative, but it's such a big part of this Doctor's run that I have to bring it up. I'm of course talking about the demystification of the Time Lords. The Fourth Doctor took a lot of trips to Gallifrey during his run, so we learned a lot about their culture, for better or for worse. Okay, there's one thing about this I did like, if I'm being honest. Whenever the Doctor travels to other planets, the people there always react to the TARDIS with shock and awe, since its technology is beyond anything they've ever experienced before. When the Time Lords see the Doctor's TARDIS, their reaction is, wait, you're still flying this old piece of junk? Upgrade to a newer model already, jeez. I just think that's cute. Unfortunately, that's not where it stops. We've got so many episodes where we learn the inner workings of Gallifreyan politics, what their school systems are like, what life is like for Gallifreyan citizens outside the elite class. We even find out that Gallifrey has its own public broadcasting news show. I think this might be an unpopular opinion among Doctor Who fans, but none of this stuff is ever something I wanted to know. The Time Lords were always built up as this ancient, proud, and mysterious race that had technology and abilities we could only dream of. This information just made them seem so ordinary. Well, okay, there was one addition to the Time Lord lore that I did like, the regeneration cycle. The basic idea was to make the Time Lords not seem quite so immortal. Rather than being able to regenerate indefinitely, they could only do so 13 times, and after that they're as mortal as you or me. I really like this idea, since having a definitive eventual end for the Doctor's life does sort of heighten the stakes. I mean, sure, we know he's not actually going to die, but you gotta have a suspension of disbelief. You know, Romana's regeneration scene happened after this was introduced, so I guess she just said, I think I'll chop potential centuries off my lifespan. Nope, calm down, Jack. Breathe. The concept of the regeneration cycle is introduced among the reintroduction of the Master. When we catch up with him here, he's reached the end of his regeneration cycle and is desperately clinging to life, now aged into a horrible, rotting version of himself. He simply refuses to die, searching for any way he can possibly renew his regeneration cycle. I love this idea, showing that the Master is a perversion of all that the Time Lords stand for and represent. He eventually does find a way to extend his life by possessing a scientist from the planet Traken named Treemass, because apparently he can just do that, and also it immediately changes his hair and clothes. Okay. Alright, one last thing I want to touch on. I think the special effects of this era are some of the show's best. The model work especially is great. I'll admit, when I saw this, my first thought was, wow, did they burn a real house down? Wow, did they blow up a real planet? Also, there was a very brief period where the Doctor used this secondary TARDIS control room that I really liked. I mean, look at it, it's so cozy looking, it's like a little cabin. I wish he used it more often.
In fact, yeah, let's just say that this is my secondary control room, because I don't super duper have access to my regular set right now. Okay, before we finish up, it's time to count down my top 5 Fourth Doctor stories, and I gotta tell you, this was probably the hardest top 5 list I've had to do. I mean, There's a reason the Fourth Doctor stuck around for 7 seasons. He's got a lot of good stories. But I was eventually able to narrow it down. And I'll warn you right now, they all have the word "of" in them.
Number 5, The Horns of Niemann. I'm probably in the minority on this one. The general consensus that I can find on it seems to be, oh yeah, that was an episode, I guess. The people of the once great Skanos Empire have fallen into godlike worship of a powerful alien known as the Niemann. What they don't know is that the Niemann are actually an entire race, merely using the Skanans to expand their own empire. Okay, elephant in the room, the Niemann don't look good. Look at the top of his head! The story itself is clever, sure, but it's not like the most clever thing I've ever seen. Honestly, I think I like it so much because it's one of the best K9 episodes, even though he's not voiced by John Leeson. Number 4, The Brain of Morbius. The Doctor and Sarah arrive on the planet Karn, where Morbius, an ancient enemy of the Time Lords, is attempting to bring himself back to life to exact his revenge. This one is a great sci-fi horror story. It's so creepy and gothic. It reminds me a lot of the classic Universal monster movies, Frankenstein specifically. I especially love the body Morbius gives himself at the end. I can imagine that giving kids at the time some nightmares. Not me though. I'm very brave. Number 3, Terror of the Zygons. The Earth is under attack by a shape-shifting race of aliens known as the Zygons. First off, I think the Zygons have one of the best designs of any Doctor Who villains. It's a shame it took them so long to show up again after their first appearance here. Their shape-shifting ability also makes for another great horror story, since anyone could secretly be a Zygon in disguise. There's one really great scene of a Zygon which has taken the form of Harry trying to kill Sarah. Since he looks like a familiar character, the stakes feel much more real, plus the way it's shot looks like a scene straight from The Evil Dead. Also, the Loch Ness Monster is there for some reason. Number 2, City of Death. The Doctor and Romana take a little trip to Paris to take a much-deserved break, but of course things are never that simple. Skaroth, the last surviving member of the Jaggeroth race, is attempting to create a device to turn back time and stop the explosion that wiped out the remainder of his people. The only problem is that explosion provided the spark that gave way to all life on Earth. Not to mention, Skaroth's temporarily fractured self is responsible for most of the major points in human development, so the Doctor can't allow his plan to succeed. This is probably Tom Baker at his funniest. He's just so high energy and witty in this one. More so than usual, I mean. It even features a small cameo from Monty Python's John Cleese. Number 1, Genesis of the Daleks. Yeah, if you're familiar with Doctor Who history, you probably saw this one coming. The Doctor is tasked by the Time Lords to go to the Dalek homeworld of Skaro in order to stop the scientist Davros from ever creating them in the first place. This is probably the darkest Doctor Who episode of the era, since this is a mission we ultimately know the Doctor isn't going to succeed at. There's one moment where he's mere centimeters away from wiping out the Daleks once and for all, and it brings about probably one of the most iconic moments in Doctor Who history. I'll just play it.
Just touch these 2 strands together, and the Daleks are finished. Have I that right?
To destroy the Daleks, you can't doubt it.
But I do. You see, some things could be better with the Daleks. Many future worlds will become allies just because of their fear of the Daleks.
It isn't like that.
But the final responsibility is mine. Mine alone. Listen, if someone who knew the future pointed out a child to you and told you that that child would grow up totally evil, to be a ruthless dictator who would destroy millions of lives, could you then kill that child?
Plus, when it's contrasted to Davros's speech later on, it's even better.
To hold in my hand a capsule that contains such power. To know that life and death on such a scale was my choice. To know that the tiny pressure on my thumb, enough to break the glass, would end everything. Yes, I would do it. That power would set me up above the gods. And through the Daleks, I shall have that power!
Davros is overall just a fantastic villain. He perfectly captures the mad scientist more focused on his legacy than the innocent lives he'll be destroying.
The Fourth Doctor's run ended when a battle against the Master for the fate of the universe resulted in him falling off of a tower. You know, going into this, the edgy, cynical part of my brain wanted to say, oh, the Fourth Doctor's overrated, he overstayed his welcome. But the fact of the matter is, that's not true. He's probably the greatest actor to ever play the Doctor, and Tom Baker's contribution to the show will not be soon forgotten. But I will say, after watching 7 seasons of TV, I'm a little bit pooed out, so I'm going to take a break before watching the 5th Doctor. See you next time, guys, and it's the end. But the moment has been prepared for. Master resulted in the Doctor's fall. I didn't.
It just looks funny.